Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Like and subscribe.
Welcome to the Sit, Walk, Work podcast, a show about paying attention. My name is Dominic and I'm your host, and today is a guided meditation. And what you can expect is that the practice will open up with a brief recap, followed by the actual practice itself. If you find today's episode valuable, please share with your friends and family, and feel free to leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. The show will begin after the following chimes. And this is a quote from SN Goenka. He was the creator of Vipassana meditation. Comes out of his book called The Art of Living. But I think it gives one of the best descriptions I've heard of what meditation is. It's a question that comes up a lot. Like, what's supposed to happen? Why am I doing this? And oftentimes I hear that folks want to meditate because they want to stop what's going on in the mind. And I read this and thought it was a better answer. The purpose of the practice is to develop in us the ability to deal with all the vicissitudes of life in a balanced way. We learn to do so in meditation by observing with equanimity whatever happens within ourselves. With this equanimity, we can break the habit of blind reaction and instead can choose the most beneficial course of action in any situation. And I think that's a good skill to have. And so today's practice took us along the lines of creating the conditions for that. We started a bit with the breath and setting the tone of practice by noticing what we walked in or came into practice with, the general feeling of what was going on within us. After observing that for a bit and then moving into the breath, it was a very focused breath to kind of hold our concentration in one spot before widening that a little bit and giving a little more freedom to whatever came up with the breath and wherever it came up. As we moved through the breath, we started to turn our attention towards sensations in the body, sensing and feeling broadly as we were with the breath, and then a lot more narrow. I walked us through this scanning of your right hand, just to really try to touch into places that normally don't get our attention. I would say in longer practices, it would be good to let your attention, you can move through your whole body one part at a time, getting more familiar with the things that are present or that are not present or that are uncomfortable and how they're changing. And so we moved from sensations of the body and kind of opened it up to just kind of noticing a bit of gratitude for this idea of equanimity and this idea that from this space, we kind of all are experiencing the exact same things as beings. We are all having these changing sensations and breaths and thoughts running through us. And for those of us actively working on it, we're creating a chance to improve that. And for those that aren't, they're just kind of spinning their wheels and engaging in their own sufferings. And then we kind of moved out of that space of gratitude, came back to the breath, came back to another check-in at the end of practice. And that took us all the way to the end. And here we are. So I want to thank you all for being here. As I like to say, it doesn't work if you don't. Set up your practice for you, right? Seated, lying down, somewhere in between. Things you want to be able to do. You want to be able to breathe well. You want to be able to be steady. You want to make yourself as comfortable as you can so that your body can be as still as it can be. The stillness helps to give you a broader spectrum to work with when it comes to sensations and experiences and stuff coming up. Because as we calm the body, it starts to make room for things to bubble to the surface that we can observe and see. And in some cases, it can also still the mind. Not always, but sometimes. Notice the position of your hands and make sure they're somewhere where they're going to be able to kind of settle and not fidget. And then set your vision. Two ways to think about this. If you don't feel comfortable enough to close the eyes and set your vision in that way, uh, then kind of find a spot slightly out in front of you where you can just softly rest your gaze. Tip preferred on something that isn't moving around so it doesn't pull your attention in various directions. And if it feels good and safe and all things are equal, close the eyes. And yeah, that kind of puts you in position, puts you in place to have an experience, to be a neutral witness to what's going on inside of you, and what's kind of what you're bringing into practice. And that's where I'd like to open us up today, is starting with just the general observation of feeling, tone, and breath. And the goal isn't to have a right answer to what are you feeling in this moment, but rather to give you the space to acknowledge whatever that is. Part of our practice today will be taking whatever the experience is providing us, whether that's what we brought into practice or what comes up during practice, and then allowing ourselves the space to meet that with a bit of equanimity. And that word is an interesting word. Sometimes we think equanimity to mean um, a bit of downplaying of a situation, whereas I like to think of it more as us being neutral to the moment, not pulled by it, appreciating it for what it is, what it's bringing up, and then allowing it to be, not adding anything extra. The extra is where we start to create the conditions for our own discomfort. I've been physically training a lot, and I found this to be very true in those aspects. Like, there is the hard work of, being in the gym or running. And then there's the story that I put on top of the hard work, right? And the way that I add to whatever's coming up within me. And so I've been trying to, when those moments arise, meet those moments by paying attention to the sensations in my body, noticing how my breath is moving, and then simply observing them with that very calm and equanimous behavior to see if I can help release some of that need for things to be a certain way, to have a certain preference for the moment. And I tell you this story because that's where we're going today. I'm going to ask you to meet whatever's coming up with you in that same way. And so, with the general idea, first, of kind of what you brought into practice, how you're feeling today, begin to allow your attention to narrow a bit to the breath. We're going to anchor on the breath as one of the gates we can use. I heard this terminology this week that there's 6 gates to our experience, our 5 senses plus our mind. And so we'll start with the first gate of just kind of noticing our breath as an entry point to our practice. In letting our attention rest on the breath, we're attempting to build the muscle of concentration to help hold our focus in this very spotlighted way. And for some of us, it could help to kind of decide where you want to feel your breath arise, whether that's where the breath shows up in the physical body or noticing the breath from its very initial starting point. And the goal is to see how long your attention can hold on to following the complete in and out cycle of your breathing. Now, the thing about holding our attention in any one place, right? In this case, the breath, is that you're bound at some point to encounter a distraction. In meditation, we call them hindrances, and they show up in various ways. Oftentimes, it can show up in the sense of a sense of drowsiness or heaviness or sleepiness as we start to get comfortable and relaxed, agitation or frustration as we have to repeat the process over and over again. The little voice of doubt that says, am I doing this right? Because how many times do I have to redirect my attention back to just following the breath? And if at any point in practice these things become true for you, then I invite you to notice those happening, acknowledge that it happened, and return the attention back to the breath. In not reacting, we keep hold of the equanimity I mentioned at the beginning of practice. And the practice invites us to get used to this idea of repetition because that's how we build the grooves of our mental process. It's how we learn a skill, it's how we get better at anything. And then the thing about equanimity is it's appreciating the moment when it's joyful and delightful and interesting, and really observing and watching that moment for what it is and knowing that that moment will shift and change. because between the time in which we started this practice to now, there's been a myriad of changes that have occurred and will continue. When we meet the moments of frustration in our practice or irritation, then we can be reminded that they will shift and change too. But we get a say in how balanced we are. Noticing as you're just observing the breath, the moments where you might start to impact the breath, especially for those of us that practice yoga, it can be easy to start to fall into a rhythm of controlling the breath. And if you find that to be true for you today, then see if you can just relax that for a moment or two and let the breath just naturally come and go. As I alluded to at the beginning of practice, your experience is made up by those six gates that I kind of talked about earlier. The six gates of perception, your senses, and your mind. And so all of those have been in play, even as you've just watched the breath. And so part of our journey helps us to start to connect those dots a little bit. So it's as if we're widening your attention to now begin to include just what your body is feeling in this moment from a sensation standpoint. And it can start by what I like to do at least, because sensations kind of come in a couple ways. They come in the most obvious things that we feel. For some of us, that can be pain or discomfort. But the one thing we commonly all share is feeling our breath move. That is in and of itself a form of sensation. But it isn't the only place that you're feeling things in your body. And so we will keep the attention wide and we let it kind of move or sweep from the largest to the smallest sensations that you feel. And it can be interesting to notice that as the sensations occur, what happens to the breath and what happened or what is the thought that's arising as you're noticing these sensations. These things are all kind of working together to shape the moment. And I often say that the breath and the sensations can be your first line of defense to knowing when your mood is shifting and changing. Shifting and changing between really one of two places. I really like what's happening, or I really don't want this to be what's happening right now. Should those appear in your practice, then your goal would be to, rather than chase those ideas, to release them and continue to observe the breath, the body, and the mind. And because your attention is a key element to what grows in you and around you, being able to harness it and focus it, even for something like feeling your sensations, is a part of the work that you get to do here in practice. So, as you've been sweeping from one part of the body to the next and encountering whatever sensations have naturally shown up, you can choose to place your attention in one spot and notice what's there or what isn't, in the same way you did with the breath. So, I'll ask you to bring your attention to your right hand, starting at the base of your right wrist, looking for temperature and texture and movement and sensations or vibrations that might be present, or nothing at all. Letting the attention move from the base of the right wrist up to the base of your pinky finger, right? These subtle places that our attention doesn't often get placed. And then feeling around the back of the right hand, you come to the base of your pointer finger. Moving slightly on the diagonal, your attention comes to the center of your right palm. From the center of your right palm, your attention slides back down to the base of the wrist, kind of on the outer edge of the right hand. And then the attention wraps around the back of your right wrist and comes to kind of the fleshy part of your thumb, the base of the wrist. And from there, the attention moves right up the center of the palm to the base of your middle finger. Before allowing yourself to feel the entire sensation of the right hand, allowing it to bounce, attention to bounce a little more freely between what you notice in your right palm and then other parts of the body that maybe went out of focus as you held your attention here. You can even contrast it with the right and the left sides of the body. So, right hand, left hand. Continuing to notice where the mind went, what happened to the breath in this process. Are they aligned? In this way, any part of your body can become a place to explore comfortable and uncomfortable sensations, to notice when a certain thought arises that you turn attention to the body and to the breath and see how your thinking mind aligns with the body and the breath from moment to moment. And it's in that noticing that you begin to regain your power, your ability, your agency to influence by not adding on and learning that you're capable of holding all of these shifting and changing elements. In this way, we come to learn that every being is having this similar experience, some a little bit more awake than others. Beginning to soften the attention from any one sensation you're feeling, using the space of breath and bodily sensations to invite or welcome in a bit of compassion, a bit of gratitude or appreciation for your willingness to sit and see the nature of all things, how life moves, how it moves its way through you, and your role in that. how each moment gives you another chance. Each breath gives you another chance to re engage, to put down the need for perfection and for things to be a certain way. Creating the foundation for you to meet life with your full effort because you've learned to surf the waves of change. Letting your attention come back to the breath that it started with. Letting your mind come back to what I asked you to consider at the start of practice, which was, how did you feel at the beginning of practice? I ask you to re engage with that same question now, just as a matter of understanding and knowing that whatever the answer to that is, that you can be balanced and okay with that. When you're ready, slowly begin to blink the eyes open and to allow the rest of the sensory information, the other gates to open, if you will. The rules don't change. You just have more opportunities for distraction, if you will, as everything comes back online.
That's the beauty of it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I invite you to check out my Substack, where we are building a community of like-minded individuals to discuss all topics related to the idea of paying attention. I hope to see you there. But until then, with metta may you be well.
Like and subscribe.